Good morning. Thank you for having me. This is a wonderful conference. It's great to be surrounded by such thoughtful people. This me, Darth Julian, if you want to sort of find me. It's an unfortunate nickname that stuck during the .com, and I just can't. Once you get one of those names, that becomes your handle, and changing it is just, it's fruitless. It won't work. Near Future Lab is where I collaborate with a number of people. It's our kind of virtual studio for thinking about interesting new things. So I want to share with you 9 ways of seeing the future, and I want to do this because I think that getting at the core of how the future is represented is perhaps what allows us to think about the future of technology. So rather than sharing with you specific examples of technology from the future, I want to look at the technology by which we come to understand and see and tell stories about the future. So here they are. This is the first sort of graph of how the future comes to be. It's the simple sort of linear model. There's an idea, it's prototyped, and then it's materialized out the other end. And maybe James Dyson is the sort of the best exemplar of that, because he's always known for doing thousands and thousands of prototypes of ideas that he has that finally become products. This is the second one. This is probably the most common understanding of what technology is. It goes up and to the right. It's better at some point in the future. And the measurement of better can be pretty much anything that you want. It's either smaller or bigger or faster or nice and slow and whatever it might be. It's a very sort of everyday common understanding of what the future looks like and how we understand it. This is the other one. This is Moore's graph. It's probably one of the most deployed and probably most incorrect graphs of where the future goes to. The sort of exponentially things are changing. Again, it's sort of the same thing that up and over and faster to the right, things are getting better, they're getting smaller, they're getting faster, and they're getting more giga, nano, whatever your unit of measure might be. This is another graph of the future. So this is the hype curve. So we understand, sort of more nuanced, sophisticated idea of things getting somehow better in some measure. There's sort of the introduction. There's hype, everyone's talking about it, and it seems like it's the next greatest big thing. It doesn't quite work, of course, and so there's that trough of disillusionment where people kind of slump, and they sigh, and they wonder, why didn't I get my jetpack? Where's my augmented reality sunglasses? And then it sort of balances out and nuances, and maybe it gets to the point where it actually becomes a product, but probably not recognizable from the initial hype. It's buried in there somewhere. This is a sort of Gibsonian sandwich spread kind of vision of the future. It's already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. So there's this kind of center. The hub is the center of excellence where things happen. Usually it's someplace like Silicon Valley, and everyone's got it. Sometimes they leave it in bars accidentally, and people find it. And eventually, with time, it'll sort of spread out geographically or temporally, whatever that kind of measure is along those bottom axes, and the rest of the world, sort of bows to the priests of Silicon Valley. Thank you for your devices and your great technology and your service companies, and that's how it works. This is a curious graph of the future from a artist and designer called James Auger, who has this, just sort of, still figuring out what's going on here, but basically there are any number of technologies that are kind of percolating out in the world. The here and now is sort of the axis along the center, and those sort of evolve, and they're sort of, brought into the here and now, and some of them might actually go into these alternative futures. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I find it quite fascinating that he has this conceptualization of it. Of course, this is my hand-drawn rendering of it. Then there's an interesting view of the future that came out in a recent paper, sort of obscure computer-human interaction society paper that I found it fascinating that it was actually even published by the society, where there's actually, they sort of outline this kind of circulatory route by which a new idea, a new technology comes, it interplays with like film and entertainment. And film and entertainment is the way in which technologists actually iterate and develop and, in a way, sort of proselytize the ideas that they have through popular entertainment. I'm quite interested in that. Then there's technology that is that's sort of modded by people. So this was another approach by a interesting researcher at UC Davis who describes the future as a mod. It's actually just a different model of thinking about technology that then gets appropriated and redone and rethought of and extended and layered by normal human beings, which is also quite interesting, of course, because we know that technology doesn't just sort of exist in the world. It's always, another Gibson quote, the street finds its uses. So it's redone and reworked. So what I want to do is share with you another view of the future, which is closer to this idea that the future comes essentially from science fiction. And I'm doing this mostly, I'll just sort of annotate over this. This is an excerpt from a larger set of volumes of DVDs that I've been producing that look at the future not as a graph, not as lines, not as sort of speculations in that very instrumental way, but actually that the future that comes to us can come to us also from things like science fiction. And I'm interested in this mostly because of the way in which science fiction provides a richer, a more complete representation of what that world might be like. So rather than just specifying the instrumental aspects of what a technology is, the science fiction, of course, because it's dramatic and because it involves the context of people and the ways in which this technology might actually be used, is perhaps a richer way of thinking about or speculating about or imagining the kind of future that we would like to live in. So I guess the point comes down to this idea that a number of us have been working with, that we've been calling design fiction, which is a sort of hybrid of design with science fiction, and using the capabilities, the abilities of design to look outside of conventional boundaries by which ideas are expressed, and combine that with a sort of similar mandate that science fiction has, which is to speculate and think beyond and reimagine how the world could possibly be. And I think if you bring these two notions together in a way, you're able to think beyond what those graphs essentially provide you. They provide you with these exceptional constraints that basically say that as an engineer, for example, and I can say this because I was an engineer, I still am, I guess, technically, that what you're meant to do is make something, again, bigger or smaller or faster or brighter, and all these kinds of very parametricized kinds of futures that don't allow you really effectively to think about these things in use as they might be in the world, lived amongst with people and people experiencing them, including their moments of failure. So you're meant to sort of excise out all the possible failures that your idea might have and just focus on the very pure sort of instrumental aspect of it. This was one of an early science fiction film that I think set a very clear example for a number of people about what space travel might be like. So giving them this context in which they can imagine themselves actually participating in space travel. So if you have a harmonica, bring it along with you, and you can play it. You can play it for your friends, and they'll enjoy the space travel all that much more. And the curious thing about this this particular film is that it's very clearly documented. There's no conspiracy that it was meant to popularize the space race and get people involved and motivated and enrolled in this vision of going to the moon. And it's very much, of course, wrapped up with Red Scare, and we need to be there first, and all the things that might go along with that. And the film is very important because it actually shows in a sort of exemplary way how an idea is sort of brought to be. So how do ideas translate themselves from just what someone is thinking into its sort of material instantiation, including all the politics and the pitching and the support. There's wonderful scenes in the beginning of the film where they actually have to show a film to potential funders in order to convince them that they should do this. And they do it quite well. They do it in a way that I think a lot of us might be familiar with. They basically show a film that sort of strips bare what the vision might be. And this is my favorite example of possibly what augmented reality could be, or maybe in a sense should be, revealing to us all the hidden aspects of the world around us, and not just how fast am I walking, or giving me turn-by-turn directions. I was surprised how many, when I used to teach, and even today talking to people haven't actually seen this film, especially with all the augmented reality hype. So this is our Saturday matinee moment. Trying not to overload you with too much theory. So I think the overarching point here is that what matters about the future maybe is less about the actual aspects of the technology. So I know this is a panel on smart technology. I guess I'm looking at it more as smart ways of representing possible futures. So rather than specific, very narrowly defined, very narrowly focused kind of futures, whether it's the nano future. So the NSF is very, very strongly behind developing nanotechnology. But why that one? Why aren't there other possible futures that we might want? Or what does the nano future actually look like? And I mean beyond the corporate vision of the future kind of film. What are the futures that we want? What are the futures that we would like? How do we actually make those futures legible to a widespread audience, more than just the sort of specialist, in order to begin to develop that conversation about what that future might be like, and refine it and hone it, and all the despite the fact that we might we still want our jetpack, and you see it in Iron Man, it's like, I really want that thing. Can't we do that? Well, I think one of the stories behind that is that we actually can. I mean, it's not a matter of picking a specific future, but multiple parallel futures is certainly a possibility. Is another. It's been a useful film in the studio just to help imagine what these augmented reality futures that people are speculating about. I'm a big augmented reality hater, mostly because I believe in the tech. Of course, I believe in the technology, but I have yet to see a compelling representation of what that augmented reality future might look for me. Something that I actually find engaging and exciting. It's engaging and exciting to pretty much every engineer that I talk to. Because they just want to build it. Of course, they want to build it because it's a fascinating bit of engineering accomplishment in order to actually build it. Of course, another aspect, an important aspect that I think is only well represented in science fiction are technology failures. No one wants to talk about technology failures. And if you think about the way in which Apple responded to what was actually, is probably a design flaw, an engineering flaw in what they did, was to essentially, in a way, deny it, like it doesn't really exist, or it's not our problem, it's the problem of your hand. Like, what are you doing with your hand? And as opposed to, in some sense, trying to find the way in which, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you communicate to an audience that technology doesn't work. And I guess, for this collection of moments of sci-fi failures, to me, it's quite fascinating that science fiction has found the way to sort of represent failures. They're not always pretty or good, but that finding that kind of that trope, that genre convention in which it's able to tell that story, just as it's able to tell quite wonderful stories about very optimistic technology futures or curious technology futures or technology futures that somehow seem more present and seem more legible to a widespread audience. And then what science fiction is able to do, and I think that we as communicators of ideas are able to learn from it, is that it does have these ways of expressing that future, and it does it in a way that is quite effective, mostly because people see it and they we're drawn into the story, and the means and mechanisms by which it's able to communicate it means that other people sort of, a wider audience enrolls itself into the vision and begins to understand what it is. So the example I think that was early on of Minority Report provided that kind of anchor point for a widespread audience to understand what it was to use gesture to interact with a computer. If you had said that to someone who was not sort of technology minded, they wouldn't understand what that meant in a sense. I mean, they're not saying that they couldn't imagine it given enough coaxing, but in a film like Minority Report gives them that kind of anchor point. So they say, well, what do you mean gesture interface? It's like that thing in Minority Report, like, oh, okay, I got it. And they didn't get it because it was beyond their capacity to imagine. It's that Minority Report combined amazing visual storyteller Steven Spielberg with an amazing imagination of P.K. Dick, together with a technical consultant, John Underkoffler, who actually spent the time and energy to focus on what that gesture interface world might look like. And with that, I think I'll conclude. Thank you.